Are you aware of any written languages that haven't been decoded yet?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a number of them. There's Easter Island script. I was just talking to, we've apparently made a few advances there now. It's called Rongo. And we only have about maybe 25 examples of texts, but we're beginning to break that. There's also the big one is Harappan. Harappan, for a long time, we used to say there were 5 independent scripts on the planet.
Mhm.
And those were Chinese, cuneiform, which is Mesopotamian, Egyptian, Maya, and then Harappan, which is from northern India. That's the only one that we've never cracked. And now all the epigraphers, the people, that's the term for epigraphy, is translating these languages. They're all ganging up on Harappan and want to kick it off the list because we can't break it. It had a big enough symbol set, but no one's been able to crack it. And now they're saying it's just an elaborate symbol set and doesn't reflect the spoken word.
That's a hypothesis, but which is would explain why it's so difficult to break.
But we could just be faced with a quitter generation. Maybe somebody will pick up the baton next generation.
Kids these days with their
The other one that fascinates me is from the Americas. It's the quipu. The Inca had the quipu, this knotted string records, but it was definitely encoding more than just math. We know the math. I know lots. I can do the math quipus and figure out what they're totaling and things. Yeah, there's a quipu right there.
Quipu are recording devices fashioned from strings historically used by a number of cultures in the region of India and South America. A quipu usually consists of cotton or camel fiber strings. So there's a set of strings and they're supposed to what? To be saying something?
There's one long string that the little ones dangle off of, and each one of the dangling strings have sets of knots on them. And the knots, some of them are mathematical quipus, and those we can just do the math. We can prove that it's math. Mm-hmm. They also encoded language in there. They had entire libraries in Cusco where Spanish conquistadors were brought through, and the caretakers of the libraries would just they'd say, pull that one down, read that one to me. And he'd pull it out and just read a history of something that happened 200 years earlier. So it was definitely writing. But in the 1570s, one head of the church there had all of the people that could read them, called quipu kamayaks, gathered up, had them read all of their quipus and transcribe them into Spanish books, and then had the quipus burned and those people murdered.
Okay. Well, there you go.
And so we can't break the code still today, but we know it was absolutely a written language. Though it wasn't written, it was weaved or knotted.
And there's still some quipus available that could be...
I think now we've just crossed the 1,000 mark. So we have 1,000 quipus. There's enough to break the code. And I think this generation might be the one that does it.
It's sad that so few have survived.
Yeah.
I mean, 1,000 is good, but it's...
But see, Peru has barely scratched the surface with archaeology. There's so much out there. There was a priest I read about named Diego de Porres, who was one of the early people in Peru converting communities. And his chronicle is real clear that he wanted to teach this community of 3,000 people all the Spanish prayers, the important ones for them to be converted into Christianity. And he had the community's quipu kamayaks knot quipus for each person that told them that they could read them out and memorize the prayers. And if they were caught without their quipu in town, they were flogged. So he had 3,000 of the same quipu made and handed out to this community. If we find that community and find its cemetery, there is our Rosetta Stone.
You know, it is probably the case that there's somebody in Peru and maybe a large community that knows this language, that understands. And like, you just have to show up and ask them. And it's like, they're like, oh yeah.
There are some communities that are using them. There's a couple of them that we had high hopes for. And then it was apparent that they were just making shit up. They didn't actually know how to read it. They just knew it used to be read. So they like made a bunch of stuff about what it says and they
Yeah.
bring it out and they act like they can read it. But then when you ask them the details, they don't know.
Yeah.
But then on a much simpler level, there's llama herders who keep a string in their pocket and they've got the knots equaling how many llamas they have. And then they have subcategories of information like this one's sick. We've lost these ones. This one's pregnant. So they have these more simple and more mathematical quipus, but they're using them to effect as a record.